All right, so far we've explored the three facets of our callings. That means our general, our specific and immediate callings. That includes, the other kind of language, which is like a big and personal and today. We've also explored this idea of a kazone and how kind of the sweet spot of kind of interacting parts of our life would help give us a vision, and that vision really can connect to our specific calling or our personal calling. That kazone is a vision that God has for us that we get to explore and develop and see and experience. So in this last video, we want to talk a little bit about what does it mean to explore that third facet, which is the immediate calling or the today calling. I actually think this is the most difficult one. I mean, it's one thing to have a sense that God is we're part of a universe with God and God's involved in our life, and to find some way to kind of listen for His voice and kind of shape our lives to Him. It's another thing to kind of find a career, to actually give our time to something and have a job that we enjoy or we get to do and bring, resources home to our families. But it's another to say, every day when I wake up, there are specific people and things and relationships and opportunities that help me fulfill a sense of, again, calling today. That may or may not always connect to, again, my work or my relationship with God. So what does it mean to have that immediate or that today calling active in our life? That we wake up each day knowing that we're a part of something, or we're ready for it at least. So many of us wake up immediately and we're immediately distracted by all the thousands of things that have to happen that day. One of my favorite authors is C.S. Lewis, and he says this way, that the first thing we need to do in the morning is to try to give our attention to God before all the wild animals come and just enter into our mind and our hearts. It's like fending off these beasts that are also immediately pulling us to places of stress and worry. So how do we do that? Well, I think part of the answer is found in the earliest part of the Bible, in the book of Genesis. The very first part, the creation account, as God is creating the world. And some of you may be familiar with this, that He creates the world in 6 days. And it says in the Bible that on the seventh day, He rested. It's where we get this idea of Sabbath or Sabbath rest, or even Sunday church is oftentimes on the Sabbath or the seventh day. And that seventh day is meant for kind of recalibrating our life, reconnecting to the things that are most important, finding some rest, some restoration, some recreation, not recreation, but recreation inside of us. And part of the secret is found in that passage, and we kind of read it differently today. Like we kind of get the order messed up. Matter of fact, in that passage, it actually says that there was evening, then morning, the first day. And you read that and you go, wait a second. That sounds backwards. Shouldn't it say morning, then evening the first day? Because we all count our days by waking up and then going to sleep, right? Your day it starts when you wake up and ends when you go to sleep. Now that actually the Christian theological argument against that is, that seems awful self-centered, doesn't it? In other words, so your whole day is just about you? In Scripture, it describes to us that God is actually bigger than all of our days, that God is actually active. And the craziest part of that cadence that's described in that early part of Genesis is that our day begins at the end of the day. And one of our first acts of trust in God is actually to go to sleep. And then we wake up because God has been working all night long, and we join Him in what He's doing in the world. That, I think, for me at least, takes a lot of the heat off of having to make every day work out exactly the way I think it's supposed to work out. If I'm not just the old captain of my life, and if God is involved in it, I can trust Him in so much more parts of my life along the way. So part of that's a cadence, right? It's a rhythm. It's finding practices and rituals in our life that actually help form us and shape us and empower us and strengthen us. Today we talk a lot about self-care, and I think that's really important. I think we have to care for ourselves, or else we won't have anything left to care for others. But that care for ourselves also shouldn't be so vain and narcissistic, right? Can we own that? That part of this is that our care for ourselves is because we have value and we have worth, and that we have limits to who we are. Like, we are creatures, right? We are created beings in a sense. Like we are not the gods of the universe. So we have limits. So what do you do with your limits? You can expand them, you can grow them. We know that in athletics, right? So if someone wants to learn how to do something, that is, they put practices and exercises and physical training into their life, that they will have a greater capacity at the end of that. That's training, right? It doesn't happen overnight. If you were to ask me today to run a marathon, you would probably need to have an ambulance standing by. But if you were to help me put on a training regimen in my life, and then over the course of the next few weeks, I learned how to run in a particular way, had good gear, put more and more miles on each and every day as I went, I probably could do a 5K, in about 4 years. But that's training. We have capacity, we can grow, energy that we can bring to something. So the question I want to ask in this video is, do you know the practices in your life, the self-care practices or rituals that help you grow your capacity or at least restore your capacity? So many of us will come home just exhausted at the end of the day, and we'll kind of go to sleep at night, not because sleep is like intentional, but because sleep is just, we're there. We're just going to crash onto the bed. And so what does it mean to put practices in our life that actually help us to grow our capacity and to actually have the strength to care for other people? The idea about this, I first heard in a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's written a number of years ago by Stephen Covey. But it comes from another scriptural idea. This idea is of sharpening the saw. Now, the proverb talks about the fact that cutting down trees all day long basically will dull the edge of a blade, but sharpening it will allow you to cut down more trees more effectively and more efficiently. So for many of us, we are constantly cutting down trees. We're working hard, using the tools and the gifts and the abilities that you have, and your capacity, your heart, your passions, your intellect, all the things that you have available to you. You're using those. Those are your kind of like your tools, right? But then we just keep doing that over and over and over again, and the blade of our axe keeps getting more and more dull. So what happens? It just takes that much more work, that much more effort. And that means we never get out of the cycle of feeling empty or out of gas or exhausted or just soul weary. So what does it mean to have practices in our life? Now, part of this takes some time. You might know these immediately in your life, but it might take you some time to kind of unpack them and learn about them. I've kind of done this in a way that makes it memorable for me. I'll share kind of 4 practices from my life that I think are really helpful for me. And it allows me to keep trying to care for the people that God puts in my way. The people that I come in contact with, whether it's my family or part of my career and my callings. And there are 4 practices, and they kind of connect to 4 kind of realms of our life. The physical realm of our life, the kind of social, emotional realm of our life, kind of our intellectual realm, and then also our spiritual realm. There are more realms than that, but these I think are kind of 4 of the most basic ones. Matter of fact, there's a passage in Scripture that as Jesus is teaching to a whole crowd of people, they're asking, what is the most important things in this life? And he actually calls it the greatest command. It's to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And it seems to kind of connect with those 4 realms, doesn't it? So here's my 4 practices in my life. I'll start with the physical. For the physical area of my life, I have to do what I call sweat something out. Now, again, that's pretty broad, but it is. It's just, I need to kind of have some kind of physical exercise. I'm an athlete growing up. I played soccer in college, and to this day, I still enjoy outdoors and some kind of physical competition. I'm not really great at going to the gym, and so I have to find other ways to do that. Maybe it's hiking, maybe it's exploring, maybe it is doing some things and some exercises and stuff at home. So that's an area of my life. So my physical area, every week I know I need to sweat something out. If I don't, I get kind of grumpy, I get kind of fidgety. It's kind of the same thing with our 3 boys when they were younger. My wife and I would look at them and they would just be bouncing off the walls, and we would say to each other, yeah, we need to go outside and run the hounds. They need to get some energy out, right? That's one of the reasons why we bought a trampoline. They can bounce it out of themselves, literally. So for me, sweat something out. That's the physical area, physical realm of my life. Now, the social, emotional area of my life is kind of interesting because I work with people so often, and I know many of you do as well. One of the challenges of working with people is you never really know when your job is done. You never really feel like, is it done? Is it fixed or whatever? Is there an end to this? And the answer is no, because you don't fix people. Now, many of you will be in places like medical field or whatever else, and you'll bring some form of healing. But we all know as we get older that there's other things that need fixing, or other things that need healing, or other things that need restoration. And so it's hard to sometimes feel like your job is done. So for me, one of the most helpful things I can do in my social, emotional part of my life is just fix something. So my phrase is fix something up. That is as simple as doing yard work. That's as simple as something in my house is broken and I fix it. It's joining with a friend of mine and he's fixing something or building something or doing something or creating something. I just need to be able to see something completed, whether it's a Lego model or whether it's, again, installing, something at my house that's been broken. At the end of the day, for me, my social, emotional side gets restored when I fix something in the real world, tangible, right? Because people are never really fixed. But that's okay. That's what we do. We get to walk with each other. So physical area, sweat something out. Social, emotional, fix something up. In my kind of mental, intellectual area of my life, I read a ton of stuff all the time to keep up with my industry. Keep up with spiritual life, keep up with the things I'm teaching in classes, the things I'm teaching in other places, things I'm writing about. So oftentimes my reading is very directed toward my career and my sense of calling there, my specific calling. So for me, one of the things that really helps me kind of find that restoration mentally and intellectually is actually reading for fun. Because it doesn't require me to have to figure out something for my job. So it might be just a simple, fun novel. I might be able to find myself again someplace on a beach somewhere, just sitting quietly and reading, and it just makes me feel more restored. Or maybe it's something I really enjoy, some topic or interest that's off of my work world. So that's my area for intellectual and kind of mental, is to read something fun. The last area is the spiritual area of my life. And for my spiritual area of my life, I know that I need to sit somewhere quiet. So much of my life is go, 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 meetings, people, all those kind of things. And I actually really need alone time, a quiet time, some kind of solitude or silence in some of the spiritual practices. And so for me, I need to sit somewhere quiet. Now, that isn't always possible in my most preferred way. My most preferred way would be sit by water quietly, right? Like something by the ocean where I hear the waves coming in and out and the tides. That sound alone will restore me in like 15 minutes. Or sit by a river or a waterfall or something like that. I just feel restored by that. So if I can't do that, then I still would need to find some place quiet where I can kind of get alone with my thoughts. I spend some time reading scripture or praying, maybe journaling, reading an inspirational author around spiritual life things, and that is helpful for me. So there we go. Those are my 4. What are your 4? Think about your own life. What helps you to be restored physically? That does include sleep, by the way. And some of us are not good sleepers. I actually wear a little device on my wrist each night to actually, when I wake up, to see if I actually slept well or not. I need to check in. Did I sleep well? Did I get enough REM sleep or not? So sleeping could be in that category, but other things as well. And then in the area of your social, emotional, with people. Maybe that is a really good friend that you need to connect with consistently in your life. I have a really good friend, lives on the other side of the planet, but we weekly will get online and talk to each other. The other area, again, is mental, intellectual. You might have to think through that one, like what restores kind of your mental capacity, the things, the way you use your mind, and then lastly, your spiritual area. Like what really puts your soul back together again. And I would say that throughout your week, you put those into some category of sharpening your saw. The work you do, the people you engage with, really want you to be your best, and you want to be your best. So what are some 4 practices in each of those areas that you can put into your life that help you be restored, be prepared to help other people along the way? Because when it's all said and done, we want to bring our best to the people we care about the most. The meaningful work that we are called into and given as a gift to do, we want to do that well, but we don't want to be burned out. We don't want to be exhausted all the time. So take heart, take some time, and think about what your practices are for self-care and really that recreation inside of you.